We're back to mix it up on the day's other headlines. New reports of backroom dealing at the White House, and Blagojevich goes on trial. But we start with the White House pushing back on reports of another job offer meant to entice a Senate candidate into quitting a race. Andrew Romanoff was reportedly encouraged by a top Obama advisor to pull out of the race against Colorado Senator Michael Bennet in exchange for a paid government job. The White House says a formal offer was never made.
Did the president sign off on the White House's approaching Romanoff about the prospect of jobs to get into?
The president wasn't aware of that.
Wasn't aware? What is his reaction to this?
I haven't talked to him about it today.
Just last week, the White House addressed allegations a similar offer was made to Congressman Joe Sestak in his race against incumbent Arlen Specter in Pennsylvania. Here to mix it up is our panel, editorial writer for The Washington Post, Jonathan Capehart, and political editor for The Washington Examiner, Chris Stirewalt. You know, last week, guys, the storyline with Sestak was, look, it was a volunteer position. It wasn't a full-time job. It wasn't paid, and therefore this wasn't improper. Now we've got the same offer for a paid position. And so, Jonathan, let me start with you. Why isn't this a crime?
Because, I mean, I don't know about you, Elliot. You're the lawyer here among all of us. I can't get myself
overboard already.
No, but I can't work myself up into a froth over this. This is, unfortunately, this is how Washington works. I think the problem that the administration has is that when then Senator Barack Obama ran for president, he promised to bring about change to Washington and do away with the ways of Washington, the way Washington usually works. And the Sestak issue and the Romanoff issue just show that, you know, those old ways are hard to change. There's nothing, I'm no lawyer, but I don't see anything here that is horribly bad, wrong, or illegal.
Jonathan, you're right. This may not look atypical, may not even look terribly offensive to people, but sometimes if you read the language of the statute, it is in fact possible to say this is within the context of that statute that makes this illegal. Chris, is the analysis now different? Is the White House in a bind now that we have an offer of a paid position rather than just a voluntary position?
Well, I think it's probably unlikely that we'll see criminal prosecution. I think very few people will be in the kind of froth that Jonathan described as far as a criminal prosecution. But the real problem here is what Romanoff says about Sestak. You have a situation where the White House waited 3 months before answering questions about the Sestak job offer. When they finally did answer the questions, it strained plausibility. The description that was offered strained a plausible description. Now we have from Romanoff a rather cut and dried, straightforward thing. 3 jobs were dangled in front of Romanoff if he would get out of the Senate race against the more conservative preferred White House candidate. So the question then is begged back to the Sestak matter. Why couldn't we have had this kind of accounting of the Sestak matter either at the beginning or at any point? There are still a lot of unanswered questions about Sestak.
I agree with both of you. The odds that there would be a prosecution based on these facts still seems to be incredibly thin. On the other hand, it is an appearance issue for a White House that wanted to pretend it was doing things differently. Right. And it is fodder for those who want to seek investigations to throw the White House off its political agenda or its substantive agenda and demand information, and dig into the political operation within the White House and find out if there are any other cases that will pop out over time. But this is all going to happen over the course of what will be a long, hot summer leading up to the midterm elections. Next, the corruption trial of former Illinois Governor Rod Blagojevich. Blagojevich was all smiles when he arrived in court today. He's pleaded not guilty to charges he tried to sell President Obama's former Senate seat.
How are you feeling?
Great, I feel great. It's going to work out.
Today is the day that begins a process to correct a terrible injustice that's been done to my husband. My husband is an honest man, and I know that he's innocent.
A host of federal officials could be called to testify, including top White House officials Rahm Emanuel and Valerie Jarrett. Now, here's the question, guys. We have just seen another controversy where we've said, look, no criminal offense occurred in terms of Romanoff and Sestak. Do those facts that are now coming out every day in a different form have any implication, or do they change the way we look at Rod Blagojevich's context in that trial? Jonathan, what do you think?
It doesn't change anything for me. I mean, the thing about Blagojevich was just how bald and raw he was in trying to exchange his power to appoint the person who would take over President Obama's seat.
So you're saying it was not a question of the underlying fact, but the rawness with which he did it, so that if you do it the way they did it with Romanoff and Sestak, a little bit more subtly, somehow it's okay?
Well, no. I mean, you've got Blagojevich on the tape saying, "I've got something of value, and I'm not just going to give it away. I'm not just going to give it away for free." This was a guy who was trying to work to his best, to the best of his ability, to get something for him, politically or financially.
But Chris, let me ask this question of you. The White House was saying, "Look, we've got something of value too, which is our endorsement in Democratic primaries for the United States Senate. And in order to make sure we get that to the person we want, we're going to give something of value, jobs, to the people we want out of these races, Romanoff and Sestak." So, I mean, doesn't the entire aura around these cases begin to merge?
Well, look, this is not a good summer to be a Chicago politician. This is not a good summer to be associated with this, because basically what Blago is saying is, what I did may be sleazy, but it was legal. It was sleazy but legal, and it was for the best interest of the people of the United States. That's essentially the same argument that we hear from Robert Gibbs about what went on with Romanoff and what went on with Sestak. It's totally different orders of magnitude. It's totally different as far as what kind of things are alleged, but it's still the same fundamental argument. Sleazy but legal is not where you want to be when you're trying to make a case to the American people.
True, but there are a couple of things, though, that haven't been mentioned. One, what Sestak was offered was an unpaid advisory position on a presidential commission.
Jonathan, that distinction falls off now that we have Romanoff being offered 3 paid positions. Look, folks.
Well, remember, and then that leads to the second point. Romanoff had applied for at least one of those positions
9 months earlier. And look,
through the Change.gov website.
It's not the specifics of this case. It's the point that we see a White House that's engaging in the same kind of political practices that Rod Blagojevich ended up getting his hand caught for. It's a greater order of magnitude, but it's the same principle.
Guys, time is running out. We will continue this discussion, no doubt, over the course of the summers. My prediction: no prosecutions when it comes to Romanoff and Sestak, no doubt. On the other hand, Blagojevich will be convicted, and then people will have this conversation for months and years to come. Jonathan, Chris, thank you for joining us.
Thanks, Elliot.
You bet.